At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
And welcome to the Author Brand Show, where you're going to want to take notes. And if you don't take notes, you can click below here and download the notes. It's very easy to do. Boy, I've got a great guest today. There's a lot of talk in the world about, AI and what's coming next and all the rapid technological changes. And our guest today, he can answer some of those questions for you. I'm sure we'll see if we can get some good, juicy tidbits out of him. He's a VP of Emerging Technologies at Ericsson in Silicon Valley. He's worked on cutting-edge topics of 6G, Gen AI, Metaverse, XR, a bunch of things. He serves on the Spectrum Advisory Board at Ofcom and serves as a technical advisor committee to the FCC. So he's been around the block. He's also a fellow of the IEEE, it's a Royal Academy of Engineering, and Royal Society of Arts, RSA, Institution of Engineering and Technology, that's IET, and a distinguished member of the Harvard Square Leaders Excellence. That sounds very hoity-toity. Our guest is a serial entrepreneur with 5 companies, composer, pianist, 5 albums on Spotify, iTunes. He's fluent in several languages. Sounds like Michelangelo. But welcome to the show, Mischa Dohler. Mischa, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on your show, Doug.
I'm going to call you Michelangelo instead. The modern day Michelangelo. He does a lot of things here, from music to tech. So we're going to get into some things here in a minute. In terms of what's controversial, what's the biggest controversial thing people are worried about or envisioning with, we'll just start with generative AI, for example.
Yeah, sitting in Silicon Valley, I think one thing we're really concerned about is Gen AI kind of eroding the middle class as we know it. If you think about it, more and more generative tasks are being actually taken over by AI. I know companies who don't hire any copywriters anymore because, between all the models, they're good enough to just replace at least the lower end of the scale. And, if you extrapolate, suddenly you may end up in 10 years in a society where the middle class just has disappeared. And we need to come to terms with this from a tech point of view, policy point of view, and public engagement point of view.
All right. So I want to talk about how we can, navigate that somehow. But before we do, let me tell you about yourself. You're obviously an accomplished musician, multilingual, and big into tech. Give me a bit about your background. How'd you get involved with all this?
I want to become a professional pianist, actually. And something's gone massively wrong in my life. And, I performed at the age, I think 14, really screwed up on stage. And I thought, I'm never going to do that again. But I loved my piano so much, went back home and said, if I start composing and playing stuff, I have done myself. If I make a mistake, nobody notices. So I started composing, continued that journey, and I've published albums ever since, but went into the tech world. Actually was a physicist in between, somehow ended up in technology, somehow ended up in telecoms, and really loved that, but always kept my heritage of that cultural part, of that humanity part.
That's great. That's actually my TEDx talk is the power of humanity in the shadow of AI. So
love it.
I can't wait to take some of the transcripts from today's talk and use it in my next talk.
Love it.
So VP of Emerging Technologies at Ericsson. We talked briefly before the show. I used to work at Nextel, and I had an Ericsson phone, had a Nokia phone, and it feels like those companies from the 90s are kind of gone. But here you are. Tell us what's going on at Ericsson, what you guys are working on.
Well, it's the modern phase of Ericsson, right?
Yes.
So we kind of shed the mobile phone, so we don't do that anymore. But you need 2 parts of the equation. You need a mobile phone, and you need the equipment on the roofs and everywhere to connect essentially to the wide internet. That's what Ericsson does. So we're market lead at the moment. And my role in Silicon Valley is really to do technology. So engaging with everybody here you can imagine, make sure as you connect your future devices to our 5G, 6G infrastructure works. So I do technology. I do a lot of policy as well. So that is mainly on the East Coast. So I'm very frequently in DC, New York, really working with some policy stakeholders there, and my fantastic colleagues as well who are there on the East Coast. And I do a lot of public engagement, keynotes, being on shows like yours to really bring home. It's not only about boxes and cables. it's also about you, the human part in us.
Sure. Yeah. So Ericsson is more on the backbone and stuff, and not so
Yep.
on the phones anymore. That's probably a pretty good move, considering that people are get fickle with things, but they got to always have the foundation to rely upon. So let's get into the AI thing and how we can help preserve part of the middle class if possible. But I saw somebody's meme on social media talking about copywriting, art, music. Of course, being AI can do it much faster, not necessarily better, but faster than humans. But they said what we really need is someone to do the dishes and cut the grass. One of my neighbors has a robot lawnmower, so that's already out there. But cleaning the house and doing those lower tasks seems to be a better use of our technology than taking out the middle. But I don't know if we can do that in time. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Well, it turns out that actually the lower end of, well, what we perceive as a low end of the scale, I have to say, I worked in construction for a year as well. I just loved it. I'm very kinesthetic. So, these lower hand parts of the jobs like plumbing and, maintaining the house, it turns out it's so much more difficult to automate than what's in the middle. So content writing, some fluffy music. I'm not talking about being the next Chopin or, Beethoven
Right.
or Hans Zimmer. And I'm not talking about being the next Doug Crowe doing an amazing show. We're talking about really a large swath of society, which is doing very repetitive tasks, very mundane, easy to train, easy to do. And as long as it's digital, we are able to actually really scale that. And that's really scary, I have to say. And the lower ends, probably we will get there eventually. I mean, Elon Musk just announced a few days ago, this is now, today's May 24, a few days ago, he announced AGI, so the general artificial intelligence, about a year and a half away. You couple that with all the robotic systems which are being developed, including by Elon Musk Optimus, the robot, put it together, and you realize that also these jobs will be gone. So what's left, Doug, is maybe a very kind of human interaction, teachers, psychologists, people being there for people, and of course the high-end intellectual work, I think, for a long time will still be in our human hands. But society will change. There's no doubt. At the end of this decade will look very, very different to what even you and I experienced this month.
I think it's going to happen before then. We've seen, with that. What's that one curve, that exponential curve of technology? I forget what it's called. Which one is it?
Yeah, the super exponential, the singularity curve.
Yeah, whichever one it was, where technology doubles every certain period of time, and it's exponential, right? So as a ghostwriting company, I was worried when I first saw the very first version of the ChatGPT, and then I started using it, and it's great for spinning book titles, no problem. Writing your story with your emotion and heart and soul, not so good yet. Right. So I'm like, okay. Yeah. So being, preparing for that is important for people in the creative space, for sure. You mentioned copywriting. Yeah, it's pretty darn good at most copywriting. How do you feel about being a musician? I mean, I've watched one little thing come out. I'm playing around with it the other day, and it made a little song. Like I said, it wasn't Chopin, but it was for middle market stuff, for doing jingles or something simple. I mean, pretty good, right?
Yeah, let me ask you actually, so my question to you is, have you been monitoring the progress of all these large language models, right? So when ChatGPT 3, 3.5, 4.0, right? Then we have Claude, so the Anthropic, the free models. We have Grok. We do have a Perplexity and other stuff out there, Gemini, the new model. Right. So the big question, have you been trying these over time? I mean, how close do they get to Doug Crowe, your way of thinking, your way of writing, really to the point where you say, I can underwrite that, it would not be embarrassing?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I've never had a guest ask me that, so thank you for asking that. I have tried all the ChatGPT versions. 4.0 I did this morning on something, I had a question about something, and it couldn't find it, but it gave me alternates, and it did find the answer for me. So it was more of a search function than a creative one. One of our clients is good friends with the founder of Jasper. So I use a little bit of Jasper.
Awesome.
I use Claude once or twice. The 3 or 4 iterations of the OpenAI stuff. I've used Midjourney and a couple of the graphic ones. I have a full-time graphic design team, and so far, and I have one client who uses generative AI for his posts, and I can tell because we can all tell what they look like.
Yeah.
They all look the same to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the copy,
Okay. So
the copy also sounds the same to me.
Right. So the answer is no. Doug Crowe would not understand this yet, right?
Not yet. I use the word yet.
Yeah.
I think once AI can peek into my social and personality and go back in my history and actually capture my voice and style and the way I do it without having to prompt it with something. And because I'm a science fiction guy, like a lot of us. I watch the future in fiction, and I can see oh gosh, this is like dial-up right now.
Yeah. Right.
It's not going to take long for the AI to really do a good job on the creative stuff.
Yeah.
So like you said, the middle class is threatened. And I've got people in the space who tell me not to worry. That's going to be disruptive, but then like Star Trek, it'll all work itself out into positive, after 10 years.
It's very interesting because, I'm sure if I asked the same question to the typical engineer walking the streets of Silicon Valley, they would say, I'm happy to do this. And I think that shows really that quality bar. So you're a real pro. You've been doing this for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
You do have your standard. You do have your brand. You do have your signature. And the same happens to me, actually. You asked me about my music thing. So I'm trying these tools all the time. And I have to say, at the beginning, I thought, oh my God, this is horrible. I didn't even think this is a threat. I just thought it's horrible.
Right, yeah.
Then I thought, oh, wow, this is not that bad. Now I'm at the point where I say, okay, this could be really good to inspire me. It doesn't help me, though, with my workflow because I work with a program called Logic Pro, and therefore I need actually the media import. So we're not there yet. So if it would be helpful with with your text, you do copy paste, it kind of works with your workflow. With the musician's workflow, it doesn't. But we're getting there, And my older daughter, she's a very proficient musician as well. I asked her, use these tools, grow into it. She's 16, going for 17. She should be native in all that. Yeah. But she loves her words, her brain, her emotions, her breakups, falling in love again. So I think we are developing these signatures, and I'm not sure ever we will get there to this very humane, almost, let me call this quantum humane way of being, right? So we will see. I think it's a very open, it's an open book at the moment.
Yeah, it can go many directions. The elections will be interesting to watch. That's for sure this year. All that. I'm not worried today, but I'm not ignorant. Also, I do believe it's going to only get better. It's not going to get worse, and probably by leaps and bounds that maybe we can't even imagine right now. That's why I love watching science fiction because those guys are thinking way ahead. Where you just you talk your ship and it repairs itself. Okay, cool if you're in space. But what about, hey, I want to compose something that's, techno Mozart with blah, blah, blah. And it'll do it faster than we can. And maybe the quality is not there yet, but my gosh, how many more iterations, version 1 point what, will it get to where it's just as good or good enough?
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the very fundamental question I think you're trying to get an answer to as well and I think a lot of us, what is really human creativity in the end of the day? If we find out, and I think this must be one of the most disappointing things for humanity, if we find out that simply scaling, large language models to 100 billion parameters is what we humans are. Right. So if that's the answer, because you look at the charts, Sam Altman showed, as they scaled up in parameters, emerging behavior, nothing. Suddenly, 10 billion parameters. Wow, we're starting to see things we haven't seen before. 100 billion. Suddenly you can, the big question is Elon Musk's AGI, so the artificial general intelligence, simply going from 100 billion to a trillion? Which would, I think, piss off a lot of theologists, would piss off a lot of, real humans in us. Or is there something else? Is there a quantum thing? Is there a real
Wow.
spiritual element we have not been able to measure? Is the same way as people maybe 200, 300 years ago didn't know about Maxwell's equations and
Yep.
therefore couldn't measure wireless waves, right? So that's the jury is out.
Yeah. Peter Diamandis asked on where I was on some social today. He says, it's when will it become a sentient being? When do you get the respect of being an entity?
Yeah.
Right now we all call it a tool. That's where it belongs right now. But as it becomes, even smarter, and that's a good question we should talk about. What is intelligence? Is it the recalling of data and reassembling it, or is it the creative thing of creating something brand new out of dissimilar pieces?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is intelligence how would you describe it?
Oh, I think there are really two parts to this. That maybe the more rational intelligence, and in the sense that maybe an artist looks at something and says, I will combine that style with that style and do this. The big question is, would a Dali be born out of this? I doubt, right? So we see in the arts and the music and in the media space really these quantum leaps, which really show a non-obvious step in producing new art. So I think there's still a big question mark whether machines are able to do these kind of quantum leaps, right? But then there's the emotional intelligence, and I think that is so much deeper. This is really what defines us humans, where you, Doug, know that the article was written by a machine because a human wouldn't articulate like this, wouldn't think like this. And as humans, we do deeply irrational, stupid, silly decisions all the time, nonstop, right? So it seems like we're governed by something which isn't that rational brain. So I think for AGI truly being AGI, it really needs to get to this emotional part. And if AGI is able to do that, I don't know what's left for us. From an evolutionary point of view, we went through all these different stages. Are we then just a small stepping stone to where we're supposed to, whatever the universe is supposed to be? Big question. I don't know, but I'm very, very concerned about this.
Not to go all balls of wall nerd, but when I look at the world, 4.5 billion years, we've been around this long.
True.
So it's not long enough to have any data really to speak of, right? So maybe 1,000, 10,000 years. Speaking of quantum, I would hope that our evolution will go, beyond the 3 dimensions, right? So we could actually,
but what you just mentioned, this short window of humanity versus, the existence of Earth. Super interesting. I read the other day a peer-reviewed article that actually the density of fossils we find on Earth is very low. I didn't know this. So we find a fossil every an average, there's sometimes gaps of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years.
Sure.
A lot could have played out at this time. So the article asked very simply, were there other civilizations before us, which we are just simply not able to detect? Again, the jury's out. I'm like, wow, what is going on? Maybe we are like humans version 3.0, and we don't even know about it.
For sure. I've watched a couple of Discovery Channels that talk about some lost civilization thing that was around for, 100,000 years ago. I mean, they still debate the pyramid thing, that, it couldn't have been us. It has to be aliens because we weren't that smart then. Like, I think we were pretty smart for a while. Maybe we're getting dumber. I don't know.
Maybe, exactly, right? So we are handing over, we are outsourcing our intelligence anyway,
Yeah, and one of my buddies who got his master's in this years before it became popular, and he said it's not technically intelligence. It's just putting together puzzle pieces. Doesn't really think yet. It takes common phrases and puts them together. So is it really thinking, or is it just putting together puzzle pieces?
Yeah, I think Gen AI today, as we know it, has, this, what I call like this correlative intelligence. What you say, it's being trained on a lot of things.
Right.
And it's trying to, with a single keyword, trying to find what's the highest correlation of certain words appearing. So it seems like intelligence, but, don't be mistaken. There are a lot of scientists working on what we call the causal AI, so causality, because you and I understand, if we talk something about now, later we can talk about this and talk about that. So we're building these causal chains in our brain where I think a lot of the scientific discovery and the artistic creation happens. And that is currently being worked on through agent frameworks or AI agent frameworks, the way how we are trying to remap the brain. I think brain scientists are starting to understand that quantum maybe plays a bigger role in our thought process. We are getting there. I think we're starting to ask the right questions.
Yeah, very fascinating stuff. So without getting into anything proprietary, tell me what's going on at Ericsson. What are you guys doing now that's interesting and cool and we might see or not see, but maybe experience, since it's maybe back end stuff. What's coming up in the near future for you guys?
So, AI is a big topic in Ericsson as well. We need to get the mechanics right? So think of the mechanics, building the right roads, and so you can drive your Ferrari or whatever you drive on it really well, or your Tesla. So we're doing this. We're building the next generation infrastructure, 5G, 6G. We've been doing this for decades. We're really good at that. But we kind of figured out, a few things. First thing we figured out is that the degrees of freedoms of managing and optimizing these systems just gone through the roof. And you don't realize it. You make your phone calls and it works somehow. But in reality, a lot of stuff needs to be tweaked in real time. So AI is helping us there. And that's kind of a natural progression of the telco ecosystem. One thing I'm personally very interested in, and I had started that actually when I was professor at King's College in London, well before I joined Ericsson, is that notion, could we use AI to design systems? It's a much bigger question, right? So currently we design systems with the human brains, and then we use AI to optimize and run it. The bigger question to me is, could we use AI to actually design systems, generate new protocols, new architectures? And I called that self-synthesizing networks. And I think that is a really interesting journey. It will change the way how standards are being done, how companies interact, how innovation is being brought to the market. So this is what keeps me up at night at the moment.
I'm sure it does. I saw my own project manager was playing around with it last year. And it wrote some code for her. So, it's piecing together probably common things and putting it together. But to say, hey, write me a song with no extra prompts, what's it going to create for you? What's it going to, right now it's going to have to pull from something. But you're talking about what if it at a certain point as it grows, can it just come up with something on its own?
Yeah. Exactly, right? So, and you can extrapolate it to a lot of things. So you could ask the furniture industry, I'm just choosing a very traditional industry on purpose, right? To say, hey, can't we have reconfigurable furniture, as an example, with whatever, micro nano robots? And then it would, as Mischa walks in the room, as Doug walks in the room, we want a complete reconfig of that room the way we like it. So, I think very traditional industries are being disrupted now with that Gen AI capability. And as a side result also, and it's a bit of a black swan event for every single industry, including our industry and my company, Ericsson, is... the ability, actually, the barrier of entry coming down significantly. Ericsson employs like 100,000 people. Among all of us, we have maybe 1 million or 10 million years of engineering prowess in us, right? Now, normally that is a barrier of entry which is so high that only our biggest competitors can dream to come close to us. Gen AI is changing the game. We will have single person $1 trillion companies, and therefore with Gen AI, with the right questions asked, with the right agents set up, who knows, will there be another Ericsson which can go into our space, maybe run just with 10 people? So these are big, important questions where I think our industry needs to be on top of.
I spoke with the chief data scientist over at Intel last 2 years ago. And I brought the same question, but I'm science fiction. It's going to kill us all, doom and gloom stuff. And Melvin's like, no, there's like 20,000 job descriptions we haven't even been able to write yet for this stuff. He made reference to like biomechanical. Like, I'm going to create a cyborg hand. I need somebody who knows, physics, chemistry, motion, robotic. So many different disciplines to make a hand work like this. That it's like 12 different, or maybe 100 different skills have to go into doing a biomechanical thing. So he was very positive about the future, along with my other client from the guy who founded stamps.com said, chaos for a while, and then, happiness. Like, okay,
Yeah, I mean, it's
hopefully.
I'm actually on his or her side, so I really agree. Like
Yeah.
humanity has somehow always managed to
Yeah.
emerge, with on the upper side of any disruptive changes. Industrial
Yeah.
Revolution came along, and we also thought it's the end game, and it
Right.
wasn't. But the only new kid on the block this time is that we are potentially developing a super intelligence which would be alpha to us. It's the very first time. Okay, so we're on a planet where we are alpha. We're just dominating everything from top to
Mm-hmm.
bottom, space down into the
Yep.
ground of Earth. And now we're developing capability which is potentially more alpha than us. So that's new. We need to pay attention, which is why I really maintain that regulatory frameworks are important, which is why I was very happy to read out of the White House, a decree saying that human jobs should be protected in the face of AI. So it wasn't very descriptive in a sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't telling companies you cannot fire people, but at least it brought it up to the chief executives. Pay attention. Some big changes to the middle class are happening, and I was actually surprised to see this to happen before the European Union has done a similar
Right.
regulation. So
I don't
interesting
know.
times.
Protecting jobs seems like I'm a donate to Nature Conservancy, and
Mm,
they don't protect species; they protect environments. Because
interesting.
protecting a species means you got to protect. The foundation is the
Exactly.
environment. So
Yeah. Yeah.
when I think about regulating AI, I don't think about the
Yeah.
jobs because those are going to change all the time.
Yeah.
I think about something deeper,
The environment.
maybe some
I
kind of
agree.
I don't know, some kind of use a moral code, but
Yeah.
something that's ubiquitous that allows people to change jobs and not keep their job because otherwise we'd still be making horse and buggies, right? We've got to
Yeah. Yeah.
go with technology, but in an ethical and
Yeah. Yeah.
productive manner
Well,
for
you
humanity, I
you
guess.
have narrated it much better than I have. That's exactly what that decree has
Yeah.
brought
Okay.
out. And I love your analogy of protecting species versus the environment.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what we need to do,
Right.
or maybe not. I'm kind of split on that, but we should
Yeah.
pay attention because I see really three futures. One is where potentially AI could truly take over. I think we're not far from that.
Yeah.
Maybe not next year, maybe not at the end of the decade, but it could potentially happen. Another scenario is where a few individuals really use AI for their own massive benefit, and we diminish the middle class to the point where
Right.
living becomes not very pleasant anymore to many of us. And the third one is we will have a nice symbiosis, and I
Yay.
actually
That's what we want.
coined a term there. I called it humanity. So humanity, but spelled the A as AI because I really believe in that future, and that's the future I'd like us
All
to see.
right. Misha, please trademark that. I like that. Humanity. Humanity.
Humanity, yeah.
Humanity. It's a good one. All right. I love that. All right. What are you doing? I'm gonna go personal here. What are you doing to protect your musical interests with AI? How are you gonna keep working on your piano career with knowing that 3 years from now it might not be
Well,
as interesting? I don't
you're
know.
asking really difficult questions. I haven't
Yeah.
had, maybe you've seen the release dates of my album. So my last one was 2017. I actually performed I launched it with my record label in Los Angeles,
Okay.
played in front of 4,000 people.
Nice.
And it's been, intellectual gap ever since. You need to be inspired to do
Yeah.
things, really at the level where I'd be happy to understand that. And I've been very busy lately. COVID came, then the transition I had to bring. My family, a wife and two kids, we moved to Silicon Valley.
Nice.
I'm slowly coming back into the game of that, not least because of my older daughter Noah, who's is into music as well.
Yeah.
And initially, I wanted to be like the first musician to co-create an album AI human. That was
There you go.
2017.
Make friends with it. I
Well,
like that.
it's too late, Doug. I mean, we need to. Something else has to happen, and I'm coming back to the notion of maybe I should just really just do the Mischa thing, right? So I use the piano as a diary. I play very often. I come home, I
Yeah, you
improvise,
have to. Right.
and just somehow record that and bring this out. So I'm
Right.
on it, but procrastinating, to be honest, and hope to get something out by next year.
My feeling on the creative side is based on what my wife taught me when I was getting nervous a year or so ago. And the example I give is, you know what? Rolls Royces are still made by hand. There's robots and
Yeah.
technology that can crank those things out much faster, but they still make them by hand. They limit the supply. People still revere it. People still buy them. There's probably a waiting list. I don't know, but it seems to me that, do I want to go to a concert by a robot?
Yeah.
Now, in some of the science fiction movies, they do. I'm like, oh, but in our immediate future, I would rather hear you play than listen to a robot version of what you do. And I feel that in our industry, writing books for CEOs, they don't want a robot to write their story. They still want a human energy infused in those words somehow. So
I agree. I love to hear that. But it's interesting. The content production pipeline, needs to change, because at the moment it's very difficult to say what's AI, what's not AI. I mean, there's some prompts. Yeah, I'm playing a lot with the prompting as well, so I can tell you, for instance, particularly poetry. If you look at Claude 3. Claude 3 is able to write poetry. You wouldn't be able to tell this is Bukowski or
poets have always been out of business, so I don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry if you're a poet. I'm just joking. Although
no, not at all. I'm just trying different forms to see where it's obvious and not obvious. So, but I think, the likes of Microsoft and Google have actually realized that we need to go to the very source and really stamp in a very secure, maybe blockchain-enabled way how content has been created. And then, we have a means and a platform for humans to trust human-generated content. I'm with you. We will have that emotional bond between us, where we will really go back to the basics. And I will come to your show and not a digital fake AI Doug Crowe show, and you will come to my performances, because in the end, we like to build
humans,
this emotional bond.
Now, on the same token, though, from the masses don't buy Rolls Royces and don't go to live piano concerts, right? They go to see Transformers movie. Which, when I saw that strike last year, I'm like, oh, you guys are in trouble before me, I think, because for the masses, they might not care to watch a AI Scarlett Johansson. I'm like, hey, it's on film anyway. What's the difference? I'm not holding her hand. I'm just watching her. Yeah. I think in entertainment, they've got to be very careful there, because it's it's expensive to produce that stuff.
That you and I, we are part of the mass. We are the masses.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
And I think you and I, we would welcome a lot of the stuff we maybe pay a lot of money for. It's difficult for us to just get it streamlined, automated, robotized, whatever you call it. But you and I will always have, let me call that at 1%, which will be our Rolls Royce, right? So I like to liken it to the Modern Arts Museum. If we go in a Modern Arts Museum, like Modern Tate, I love the Modern Tate in London. 99% of Modern Arts Museum is complete crap. 1% is genius. But that genius, that 1%, is different for everybody, right? So
true.
I think that's what our life will be. So 99% will probably be something automated. We're happy with that. But that 1%, that human emotional bond, will be different for everybody, but it will be there.
Yeah. Okay. So the rule here, folks, is be excellent at what you do to compete with the robots, because if you're doing an average job, you're going to get taken down pretty much almost any industry, except maybe dishwashing. But even that hopefully will be taken over by a robot soon, because I don't like doing dishes that much. I got a dishwasher, but amazing. Oh my gosh, there's so much we cover, Mischa. I'd love to have you back again. We talk about this in more in depth, but our show is about to close here. So any closing comments or ideas you can give the audience? These are mostly CEOs, founders working their companies, saying, how can I make sure I navigate this? What do you tell them to help them make them feel better?
Upskill. I spend a lot of time every day on really looking at even very quirky type of technologies, and it kind of really stimulates your brain. Be agile in your organization. And you know what? Email Doug and ask him to bring me back on the show, because we haven't even scratched the surface. And thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You don't need an invite. You're coming back whenever you want to. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Have a good day. Folks, that's Mischa Dohler, VP of Development of Emerging Technologies at Ericsson. He knows what he's talking about. If you didn't take notes, click below. You can download them here, and love to have you give a comment on the show. Thank you so much. Have a great day.